بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. So we've been discussing the introductory terminologies with regard to this course, Fiqh for Economists. So we talked about all those the basic terminologies like Islam, Sharia, Aqaid, Aqidah, Akhlaq, and then we talked about Fiqh, Usul al-Fiqh. Then we talked about the primary sources and secondary sources. Then we talked about the rules of Sharia, right? We talked about those fara'is, haram, halal, mustahab, mandub, makruh, and everything. Then in our last class, we discussed the maqasid of Sharia, right? The objectives of Sharia, the higher intention of Sharia. So today we are at the last part of this particular chapter, right? Because starting from the next class, we are going to talk about different chapter. We will talk about the properties, where inshallah we are going directly into our subject, which is actually pretty much related to economics. So this is going to be the last chapter, last section of the chapter, whereby you need to know the basic things with regard to fiqh, right? That's why you're all learning all those fiqhi uh, basic introductions, basic knowledge that you should have. That's why without those basic knowledge, it's difficult to understand the entire semester. That's why we talked about all those things, because every single thing is going to be there when you read each and every chapter, right? For example, when you talk about the transactions, right? When you talk about the contract, then you need to know what is Qawa'id al-Fiqhiyyah to do with the contract, right? What exactly, when you talk about the properties, you need to know that what Maqasid is supposed to do with wealth and properties. Yeah, you need to also know the primary sources. When we talk about the rights, when we talk about the ownership, you need to know about the primary sources and secondary sources. And also you need to know what is halal and what is haram, what is wajib, what is actually makruh, what is mandub. These are the things that will help you. That's why the introductory chapter is actually quite important for entire semester to understand, right? So if you have any issues, you can actually go back to my videos in YouTube and you can watch from the beginning to understand what exactly we meant when we said primary sources and secondary sources. Most importantly, you need to understand the differences between Sharia and Fiqh, right? You need to understand what exactly Sharia, because this is divine from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is totally from Quran and Sunnah. And then when we talk about fiqh is actually human, because it's human interpretation to those what we call Sharia, right? And then usul al-fiqh and fiqh also there are some differences. Though they look the same, similar, but of course we don't call everything usul al-fiqh, right? Basically, we call everything fiqh. Then you have the methods to extract those fiqh is actually called usul, right? And then we talked about the maqasid, because we talked about the Sharia. Then we just need to know that what are the objectives of the Sharia, based on what Sharia has been given to us, based on what exactly what Sharia intends us to do, what Sharia wants us to do, how should we react to those things, right? So these are the things actually what we so far we actually so far understood. Now we are going into the next section of this chapter, which is actually al-Qawa'id al-Fiqhiyyah. All right. So this is something that we need to know, because this is going to be, it's a very, very long subject to talk about. Same like maqasid. See that this last this all these, the one I told you, fiqh, and then usul al fiqh, and then maqasid, and then qawa'id. You see, all these actually a very big, it's a huge topic. It's not actually what we so far learned in a couple of classes. Perhaps we spent only one class, like 1 hour, 40 minutes, 50 minutes to talk about maqasid. It is not entire maqasid. We only gave you a very small, it's like a brief, very, very brief. That's the reason why we are offering in our university, the subject, for example, you learn about the primary sources and secondary sources, right? But we also have an entire semester dedicated for this purpose. So now you have to, if you want to learn usul al-fiqh, we have a dedicated semester for that, where you will learn all those primary sources, all those secondary sources. There are so many secondary sources, right? We only learn a lot. We only learn a few, right? The entire semester will teach you how and what. Then when we talk about maqasid al-sharia, there is an entire semester, there is a course in level 4. There is a course, actually those students who actually coming from economics, I mean who wants to do bachelor's in economics, you will have a chance to go through that class. It is entirely a separate dedicated class for maqasid sharia, right? The same thing, we also have dedicated semesters, dedicated course for Qawa'id Fiqhiyyah, which is legal maxim. The reason I'm telling you this, because we only gonna talk about, we're gonna explain only around 7 to 8 maxims, legal maxims. But there are more than 99 legal maxims. 99 legal maxims. So for definitely the entire semester also is not going to be, completely enough for that. But we are going to only talk about few, which is actually going to be related to this subject. Usually, Qawa'id is actually an Arabic word, of course. Qawa'id is also meaning, stability, because this is a qa'id. If you qaida, actually you may learn about the word qaida is actually those who comes from Arabic background. They know that every single rules in grammar, nahu, right? Every single rules in grammar, they call it qaida, qawaid. Even if you learn something tajweed, right? If you are learning, like, how to recite Quran properly, tartil, tajweed, they also say there are qaida for this. Usually the ustaz, in madrasa, in masjid, in surah, they always use the word qaida. So that is the basic literal meaning of qaida, is actually permanence, stability, right? It means the foundations, it means the support, right? It's like, for example, foundation of a building, the pillar of the building, intangible, or the fundamentals. Even you can call fundamentals of Islam. In Aqidah, also we say Qa'idah. Huh? These are the Qa'idah. For example, you say that Amantu billahi wa malaikatihi wa kutubihi wa rusulihi. So these are the Iman Mujmal, Iman Mufassal. So these are the Arkan. You know the word Arkan, of course, Arkan is also similar to Qa'idah. All right, like for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say, وَإِذْ يَرْفَعُ إِبْرَاهِيمُ وَإِذْ يَرْفَعُ إِبْرَاهِيمُ الْقَوَاعِدَ مِنَ الْبَيْتِ وَإِسْمَاعِيلُ. See, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he talks about building the Ka'batullah, right? The one currently we got in Mecca is actually was built by Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam and Ismail alayhi salatu wasalam. So Allah talks about it in Surah Al-Nahl, verse number 26, right? Also, Allah says in another place, فَأَتَى اللَّهُ بُنْيَانَهُمْ مِنَ الْقَوَاعِدِ, right? So these are the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Quran. The word is there. But if you want to talk about the fiqhi terminology of Qawa'id, what exactly Qawa'id is actually, this Qawa'id, this is basically, the term introduced by a Hanafi scholar, proposed by Hanafi scholar. The definition is there actually. What I'm going to give you, the definition is actually given by the Hanafi scholar. His name is Ahmad ibn Muhammad al-Hamawi, right? He wrote a book, Uyun al-Basair. So he says that, حكم أكثري لا كلي ينطبق على أكثر جزئياته لتعرف أحكامها منه. Right, which means that a predominant, what exactly mean legal maxim? A predominant rather than comprehensive rule that applies to most of the relevant cases. There is a rule that can be applied into most of the relevant cases. So they have extracted some rules. You see that? So they have seen so many samples, right? You see, for example, you see so many samples, so many examples, so many things, and then you come up to say that, okay, this rule, this one particular rule can be applied to the entire samples. For example, if you look into food items, usually you can say food items. Okay, you will say that, okay, all these food items seems like a vegetarian food items. All these food items looks like a non-vegetarian food items. These are the things. If there is a rule, you can apply to the entire most of it, for example. So these group of people look like they are from this place. All right. This group of people look like actually they are talking this language. Yeah. So this group of people look like they are coming from IIUM, because they have that behavior of the vision and mission of IIUM. So these are the things, like when you see so many things, you can actually come up with some rules, right? Exactly the same thing. There are so many masail, there are so many solutions to fiqhi masail, or we call it qadiyyah issues. There are so many fiqh issues. When you look into the most of it, whether it is halal or haram, whether it is a makruh or mandub, right? Whether it is a mustahab or mandub, right? Whether it is actually mubah, whether it is mubah, I mean, it is permitted to do that. So if you look into those entire masail, then you will see that, okay, this is the rule is actually can be applied to most of the cases. So that is what actually we call Qawa'id, legal maxims. Yeah. Okay, so I think let us go one by one. All right. Definition: the jurists have defined a legal maxim as a general legal rule which applies to all its particulars. All right, so I give you an example as well. There is something that can be applied to all its particulars. So these are the most important and principal legal maxims. So we're going to talk about 9 maxims. As I told you, we have 99 maxims, but we're only going to talk about 9 maxims. All right, let us go there one by one. All right, the first one is actually matters are determined according to intention. All right, so this one is actually, if you see the word innamal a'malu binniyat, actually that this is actually hadith. Most of these maxims, it comes directly from hadith, mostly from hadith, and mostly from Quran and Sunnah. So if you see that these are the words like Prophet ﷺ most of the time used, when Sahaba companions used to ask him several questions, all right, he actually, rather than answering for each and every simple questions, he will be saying that, okay, this is the rule. All right. You follow this rule. Whatever comes related to this, you can follow this rule, and then you can actually decide yourself. Right? When Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he sent Muaz to Yemen, what he said, how are you going to rule out? And he said that inshallah I will be starting ruling from Quran. If not available in Quran, I will rule out from Sunnah. If not from Sunnah, he said I will do my ijtihad. Right? Which means that you can do your ijtihad only if you know these legal maxims. Right? These are the legal maxims actually can be applied into most of the cases. Right? That's why We have the first one, matters are determined according to intention. Right? Deeds are judged by intention. إنما الأعمال بالنيات وإنما لامرئ ما نوى فمن كان هجرته إلى الله ورسوله إلى الله ورسوله فهجرته إلى الله ورسوله ومن كانت هجرته إلى دنيا يصيبها فبامرأة ينكحها فهجرته إلى ما هاجر إليه. So most of the time we read these hadiths because this is a quite famous hadith. That's because Sheikh al-Bukhari, he brought this hadith as the first hadith of his book, Kitab al-Wahy. His first book is Sahih Bukhari. The first chapter is actually, he talks about the beginning of Wahy, the beginning of revelation. The first hadith that he brought was this. If you open, that's the reason why most of the hadith book, if you open, this would be the first hadith that you will see. إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Matters are determined according to intention. Deeds are judged by intention, and every person is judged according to his intention. So you cannot judge the book by its covers. You can say that, yeah, because it has to be something that we need to see inside, and then intention is always something hidden. We don't know if a person doing something, but from outside it looks bad, but maybe from inside he has a reason to do that, right? So that's the reason why most of the time we read these hadiths, but we only read the first half of the hadith. We don't actually read the second half of the hadith. The second half of the hadith also quite important, also most more important as it is the first half of the hadith, because Prophet ﷺ said, if someone is actually want to do a good thing, he is doing it for the sake of Allah and Rasul, so he will get it for it. Because, for example, Prophet ﷺ said, if you want to do hijrah, right, فَمَنْ كَانَ هِجْرَتُهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. Prophet said, if your hijrah is for the purpose of Allah, because those days people been doing hijrah, they were migrating from Mecca to Medina, from so many other places of the world to Medina. And Prophet ﷺ said, if your real intention is for the sake of Allah and Rasul, yes, you will get your pahala, you will get your reward, because the hijrah is actually something that will wipe out your sins. Whatever the wrong that you have done before, if you made hijrah, you will actually wipe out. I mean, the hijrah will make you clean slate. It will be from the scratch. Actually, it will make you like a baby. That's what the power of hijrah, by the way, that time. All right, later Prophet ﷺ said, La hijrata ba'di. Prophet said, after that, Prophet ﷺ said, no, I mean, after the Medina, when Medina was established, became a country, I mean, became a center, then Prophet ﷺ said, okay, not necessary to do hijrah to Medina, because Prophet ﷺ didn't want everybody to come to Medina and stay in Medina. Prophet ﷺ wanted everybody to stay in their places. And then he wanted to make each and every places become a center of Islamic center, not necessarily only Medina, right? That's why he said, La hijrata ba'di. After Prophet ﷺ demise, there is no hijrah. Prophet ﷺ said, you see how amazing, how wisdom it is. Yeah? If Prophet ﷺ didn't say these hadiths, then everybody will say, okay, I want to go to Medina. I want to go to Medina. I mean, going to Medina is not a problem. You can go there, you can stay there for 2-3 weeks and come back. Even if you want to go for every year, it's okay. But if everybody wants to stay in Medina, then what happens? What about the other Muslim cities? Yeah, so that's why Prophet ﷺ said, La hijrata ba'di. There is no hijrah after, because there is no purpose of making hijrah when it is not needed, right? Because now you can practice Islam wherever you are. Even you are in France, still you can practice Islam. I know the problem going on right now, right? Still you can practice Islam. That's what Prophet ﷺ said. So now coming back to this maxim, the second part of the hadith, if you see, Prophet ﷺ said, matters are, Prophet ﷺ said, if your intention is for the sake of Allah and Rasul, then it's okay. If your intention is not for the sake of Allah and Rasul, but your intention is actually to make hijrah to some place for the purpose of dunya, right? You want to earn something, or maybe you want to do hijrah just for the purpose of, you want to marry someone from that country. Then Prophet ﷺ said it's okay, because it is up to you, but you won't get the reward for the hijrah. Prophet ﷺ didn't stop making hijrah for the purpose of, earning something. That's the reason why we are now flying away from our hometown, earning something. Maybe some of us may be flying away from his country to another country to get married. This is all actually permitted, but you won't get the pahala. You won't get the reward for the hijrah, right? That's what Prophet ﷺ said. So it distinguishes between the habitual actions and action of worship. It distinguishes between action of worships one from another. It distinguishes the purpose of the action for the sake of Allah only or not, right? In the event of a difference between the intention and the word. So this is why we are bringing the legal maxim here, because if someone do something, the action looks same, but intention is actually what making that action into something. All right, like a very good example here, slaughtering animal. You can slaughter animal for the sake of consuming every Friday or every Thursday or every Sunday, but that sacrificing is different from the slaughtering animal for the sake of Eid. During the Eid al-Adha, right? During the Eid al-Adha, when you do the slaughtering, it is actually different, because we are actually following the way that is Hazrat Ibrahim, Prophet Ibrahim والسلام, was doing it. So that one is different from what people normally do, the slaughtering, right? The same thing, if you want to talk, well, there are so many other examples as well. If the same thing, if you want to do the transaction in the contract, for example, you have a car, you actually give it to somebody on the basis of ijara, rental. You give it to him, and then you ask him to use it, and then when he return back, you ask him some money. So that one is actually the intention. The same car can be given to your friend without the intention of ijara, right? When there is no intention of ijara, then it becomes i'ara, which means borrowing. A friend can borrow your car, so no rental is charged, right? That's why this majalla states, al-ibratu fil uqudi lil maqasidi wal ma'ani la lil alfazi wal mabani. In contracts, effect is given to the intention and meaning and not words and forms, right? So that's the reason why Hanafis also says that, you have to have a niyyah when you are praying, but not necessarily, actually not necessarily you have to spell it. You don't have to spell the niyyah out loud. As long as you think, the niyyah is fine. In so many cases, it is true. Sometimes, I do transaction. I feel myself that I'm selling and I'm buying. And then whether I have to say I sell and I buy, whether I have to pronounce it. Like, for example, I say that I sold or I bought, saya jual, saya beli, the thing that people used to say that. Whether it is necessary, it is not necessary. But if you say so, it's okay to say, but not necessary, because as long as you have the intention of selling and buying, your intention always count. All right. The number two, certainty cannot be removed by doubt. So see, naturally speaking, things are certain, right? But if someone, for example, say that this is a statement supported by evidence or witness, is considered certain. Claims cannot refute a statement which is supported by evidence. For example, suddenly someone comes and says that I have a claim. He borrowed from me some money. All right. Now, because you see, everybody is actually innocent. This is what actually the natural law. When you go to the legal system, this is what they say. Everybody is innocent until the guilty is proven. If there is a doubt, doubt cannot prove guilty. Doubt cannot make someone charged. Someone is wrong. But evidence can make it. If you say that I borrow from somebody, if you say that he borrow money from me, you say that he borrow money from me, I should show the evidence that he borrowed money from me. Maybe the video, maybe the photo, maybe the paper, whatever it is. Without having anything, all of a sudden, I cannot go and claim, I cannot go and, accuse someone. This is what actually we call certainty cannot be removed by doubt. Yeah. The applicable maxim is al-asl al-adam fi sifat al-arida, which means that the new attributes, conditions, and claims are presumed to be non-existent and absent unless they are proven. It has to be proven. For example, if the agreement is about whether the defect in a certain commodity has occurred before or after the sale and the seller denies that the commodity was defective, his statement is as accepted. All right. So, for example, if someone sold something to you and then you actually bought it, and then you have problem because you already paid it, because what you're supposed to do, you have to, of course, you're supposed to check, unless he told you, unless he gave you the option of return. That's why today in so many places we don't have issues, because there's always options of return, right? You bought something, and then you can actually return back if you have problem in it, if you have really problem in it. That's because they want to save the time. They don't want you to open it and see and check. They say it's okay, go back. If you have any problem, you come back. We have the return policy. But but basically speaking, if you are buying something, you have to make sure that it is complete, it is good, the product is good, the commodity is complete, is good naturally. If there is a problem, you must tell in front that, okay, there's a problem in commodity, so I want. Other than that, the certainty is actually when you have done a certain contract, which means that there is a certainty that you bought the good commodity. Now you are saying the commodity has a problem, defect, then you need to prove it. All right. Okay. Next one is things. The principle in transaction things is permissibility. Permissibility. Remember, everything is halal. Every single thing is halal except whatever Allah and Rasul said haram. So which means that it is not the other way. Everything is prohibited. Everything is haram except what Allah and Rasul said halal. No, it's not like that. Everything is halal except whatever Allah and Rasul said, whatever that in the same way Prophet ﷺ said, whatever that we can understand through qiyas and ijtihad, those are the things actually haram. The rest, everything is actually halal. According to this legal maxim, all food and transactions are allowed. That's the reason why commerce and trades are areas where creativity and innovation could be needed in order to meet the needs of changing times. For example, today we have the sharing economy, right? In sharing economy, we are actually doing, for example, e-hailing, right? We have also e-commerce. We also have the hospitality, right? We have, like, the thing Airbnb, the thing like Agoda, and then in e-commerce, we have like Lazada and Shopee, and then we have like e-hailing like Grab and Foodpanda and other things. So all Uber or whatever it is. So all these things as a new form, the innovation is actually halal to do. There is nothing unless if there is any prohibited elements in that particular design of the commerce. If there is any particular, you know, uh, prohibited element, then that transaction should be prohibited. Other than that, basically everything is halal. New forms of transaction can be introduced. All right. The next one is number 4. The principle is absent of liability unless proven. It is similar to what I told you earlier, certainty and doubt. According to this principle, there is no liability unless there is a proof for it. As I told you, every human being is actually innocent unless you brought something. For example, debt and other contractual claims against a person are not valid unless there are evidence to prove them. It is a similar to what we talked about earlier, certainty proof. Yeah, this is more into the example of debt and other contractual claims. So you want to say that he borrowed money from me, he didn't pay, then you need to. That's the reason why when the banks, people borrow money from the bank always keep the papers. They have all the paperworks, right? They have all the evidences and document. Everything is documented. Even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say in Surah Al-Baqarah, that is the biggest verse in Quran. Do you know the biggest verse in Quran? Do you know that? Do you know the biggest ayah in Quran is actually talks about how do you deal with debt? When you have debt, how do you collect debt? How do you give debt? What you should do during you are giving debt. So that is actually giving the importance of Islamic finance. Remember that. All right. Okay, this is something very good. Hardship begets facility. Remember, when a certain situation gets difficult, the law becomes flexible. You know, law is law, of course. Halal is halal, haram is haram. But it is also, you know, with regard to the individual person, because Allah wants to lighten your burdens, for man has been created weak. For example, a contract concluded by a person under duress. You know, whatever the contract you did is actually, once you say, okay, I sold, means you sold. You sold. You cannot take it back. But what if someone is actually pushing you to do that? What if someone actually, you know, making you to sell his house? Maybe, you know, the gunpoint, the duress is actually something, you know, making you, you know, conditionally, he makes some conditions. It says that if you don't sell your house, I will kill some of your family members. If you don't do this, I will not give you promotion. If you don't do this, I will actually take away from you this and that. So if someone is actually pushing you to do that, that contract necessarily should be accepted. That's because hardship begets facility. You understand that? Exceptional situation, a strict adherence to a general rule. All right. A lunatic is exempted from all obligation and legal duties. For example, if someone is actually crazy, he cannot think properly. Yeah? Lunatic means someone has lost his sense. Someone lost his sense. Maybe he became the Majnun. Majnun means a crazy, you know, kind of thing. So he actually not supposed to do because he has a problem of, you know, being crazy. He lost his sense. So because of his problem, he has his property. He has something that actually but he cannot, he is not allowed to sell anything. If someone, if he did, definitely definitely please give me a second, just 1 minute. Yeah. Okay, sorry about it, it was a call. Okay, so as I was saying, you know, a person like, you know, lunatic cannot be, you know, cannot be charged for something that he did because he already lost his sense. You cannot say that, no, no, he already sold. So whatever sold is sold. No, because he had a hardship. You cannot do contract with him. If a borrower is not able to settle the loan in a lump sum, he would also be permitted to pay by installment. This is what actually banks are doing now. If you are not able to pay, if you are not able to pay your education fee or your loan, your house fee, your car fees, then the bank should give you the installment so that it can make it easy for you to make your settlement. Okay, number six, necessity renders prohibited things permissible. See, this is something in the opposite. Halal also can become, sorry, haram also can become halal. You know, the previous one is actually, you know, when there is a difficulties, you know, when there is a difficulties, you know, the beggars facility, hardship beggars facility. But this one is actually necessity. If it is necessity, for example, you know, you are in an island and you have nothing to eat, you only have the dead meat, right? The dead, usually the dead meat is actually haram to eat in normal circumstances. But if you are in a place where there is no food at all, you have to safeguard your life until you get the help. Now you are in somewhere, you are somewhere, You don't get any food, and this is the only food. And if you don't eat that, it is very difficult to live. If you don't eat it, then it will cause you problem for your life. There is something, if you don't drink it, you will lose your you will lose your you will lose your life, you know, that kind of things. Yeah, that's why this kind of darura means, you know, we cannot say darura applicable for everybody. Darura is something that individually you need to decide whether you are in the sense of darura or not. You have to know your situation because you are the master of your situation. Nobody else can come and judge your situation. So this is something something completely between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because whatever you do, Allah knows very well. Because Allah is seeing. The malaika is with you. They also see. So whatever that you decide according to your darura, it is of course between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If that is a darura, then eating the dead meat, carrion means dead meat. Eating carrion without exceeding an immediate need is acceptable. Taking the property of a bankrupt person without his consent. Usually, you cannot take anybody's properties, but actually, if a bankrupt person is there and then he has to settle to many people, then the government can come and take his property and then convert it to liquidity and then, you know, settle to all his debtors, all the debt. Forcing a hoarder to sell his properties. For example, there is a person who is actually hoarding lots and lots of sugar. And of course, you know that the necessity of sugar, everybody needs sugar. So now he is keeping it and he is saying it's all my right. I can keep whatever I want, right? So the government has to come and then they have to force him to sell his property. And the same thing like drinking wine for cure purpose. If it's really think that there is that's why there are some medicines. There is acceptable level only for the purpose of, you know, the medicine. It is allowed. Other than that, it is not allowed. Right. Number 7, harm should be eliminated. This is actually very important. Qawa'id, very important legal maxim. There are also sub maxims. I want you to understand this carefully. Please concentrate on this because there are many, almost 4 sub maxims are there. So, what exactly harm should be eliminated? Prophet ﷺ said, again, this is also hadith. Prophet ﷺ said, La darara wa la dirara. La darara wala dirara, which means that which means that harm should neither be inflicted nor received, because you are not allowed to harm someone. All right. Also, you cannot be there to receive the harm from someone. All right. Harm cannot be given, cannot be taken. So now when you look into sub maxims, then you will understand. You can also bring, you know, whatever that we discussed earlier. Make sure that you also bring the contemporary examples. So this was also one of the opportunity to talk about the contemporary examples. Number 1, a particular harm could be accepted to repel a common harm. Unqualified people could be prohibited from practicing their professions in order to safeguard the interest of the public. You know, of course, there is someone, he is who is actually a needy person. He needs a job, right? Because he has to take care of his family, but he is not a qualified person. All right, because if you think that you want to help him, because most of the time this is what happens, you know, sometimes we see that, okay, regardless of the quality, regardless of the professionalism, regardless of the ability, regardless of the CV, the curriculum vitae, the profile, regardless of his contribution in that field, sometimes we just choose someone just because he is from our country, he is from our race, he is from he is from Islam, he's from our religion. Maybe he's from our religion, but not necessarily a same religion person is actually a qualified person. So now this is actually against, this is something that to do with against the legal maxims, because if an unqualified person comes to work and he becomes the authority, then what happens actually, because of that, because he has to work for the public, right? He has to work for the people, then he will bring some problems. He will never bring the solutions to the problems. He will add to the problems. So that actually a particular harm. All right. Okay. Number two, the leisure of the two evil is fusion. For example, you are in a situation where actually you see both parties are in problem, but you have to only, you can safeguard only one, uh, which means that you need to choose the least one. Which means that, for example, this is actually very much related to the pandemic that currently we are going through, the COVID-19 pandemic. When a disease is spread, the people can be confined to a certain locality. So now I know some of you still in some mahalla. I know that I really, really, worry about everybody, especially people actually been confined in certain mahalla. That's actually for the sake of the entire people. See, this is where actually we are following the legal maxim. This is something for the maxim, not against the maxim. That's because we are asking them to stay and we are giving them the food. I know some mahalla, we are still supplying food to them. That's because we don't want to endanger others. We don't want to bring the virus outside, so that we can actually cure them and we also can cure others. Right? So we ask them to stay. The same thing government is doing now. The reason why they are talking about MCO or MCO, right? Conditional and non-conditional, all these movement orders, restrict movement orders, all these according to this, the legal maxims, they are doing it. Also, another example, the life of a pregnant mother, right, is in danger, abortion would be preferred. If a mother and a child as a, the fetus, the fetus is actually the one that in the womb, the baby in the womb. So now the baby is there, but there is a problem. You can only save either one, mother or the baby in the womb. Then if that is the case, abortion is permitted for the sake of saving the mother, not for other reasons. So because abortion is totally prohibited. Abortion is not actually something permitted. It's totally prohibited. It's like a killing a life. It's like a killing a life. So it is not permitted. So that's why, but only in this reason. The next one is repelling an evil or mischief is preferable to the acquisition of benefits. For example, there are factories that produce pollutants. At the same time provide jobs. This is what happens is most of the time. Suddenly a company will come, a foreign company will come to our country, and then they started saying that we are going to provide you jobs. We have millions of jobs secured. We will be giving you new lifestyle with a new job and everything. But at the same time, the company is going to pollute the place. There will be, the wastages coming from the factory. It will go and mix into the river, and then the smokes comes from the factory. It will be everywhere outside. It will be everywhere, in the sky. It will one day it will go and damage the ozone layer, which actually cause the global warming, which actually causes some kind of, we had a haze, all the time, people actually doing something, forest burning, deforestation, all because of this. People are having problem in pollution, right? Okay. these kind of things. So now what should be done is actually this kind of factory should be stopped, even though there is a good thing about giving the job. I understand. Uh, they are giving us the job, but they are taking our life. You got the point? Giving you the job, at the same time taking away all the happiness from you, taking away all the good thing about you. You earn money, but with whom you want to be happy? You should be happy with your family, but there is no family because of this, because of the pollution, right? So the government must stop it and then relocate the factory must be relocated somewhere where there is no people in surroundings. And we can see so many examples. We can see in Indonesia, so many places fully crowded, people are there. At the same time, they live, just side by side, the factories and all. The pollutions are there, the river, the water, everything, polluted because of that. Small children, just like 5, 7 year, 8 years old children, they have cancers, they have the disease, something, we can't, they have the heart disease. This is sometimes when we read this kind of news, it's really heartbreaking, because we led, uh, this is what we call the modern world. This is what we call actually, we call it like, we call it a country must be developed. But on what cost you call a country is a developed country? Let's say you call a European country is a developed country, a Western country is a developed country, but they became the developed country, um, on the cost of harming the developing countries. You can see that all those, because they don't want to do in their country, they use some developing countries like India, Malaysia, Indonesia. These are the countries, they use it. They use their resources to produce something, and then with that production they start selling, and then they become developed. But we are still developing. At the same time, our people are getting disease. So what kind of justice? We talk about the technology, we actually talk about the modern science and technology, but all these things are at the same time, it's favoring one group of people. At the same time, it is actually giving the hell, giving the hell to other kind of people, other group of people. So these things must be stopped. Yeah. Okay. Number 4, harm may not be removed by causing harm. This is very important also. You know, you cannot remove a harm. What they call it, a needle. We used A needle can be used to remove another needle. That kind of thing. There's a needle inside, and they want to remove the needle and use another needle to do it. So that kind of it's like a proverb in some languages they use it. Anyway, harm may not be removed by causing another harm. An immovable property such as land is offered for sale. A co-owner or a neighbor is given preference over other purchases based on the principle of preemption, right? Haq shufa, provided he purchases the property for the market price. See, for example, uh, this shufa'a is actually, we are going to learn this, especially in the next chapter, in properties. Okay, shufa'a is actually something only we have in our sharia. No other sharia talks about shufa'a. Shufa'a means you have a land and you want to sell. You have a terrace house and you want to sell. Better you ask your neighbor first before you go to the market. Okay. So now because my neighbor, I have to ask my neighbor, do you want to buy? If he is willing to buy, we have to sell to him on the market price. We cannot sell to him uh, double price, because we cannot sell to him double price because we don't want to sell it to him. That's not the right thing to do. Because why? Sharia is actually talks about the harmony. We don't want someone to come to become my neighbor who actually is different from me, who is actually bringing some other things. Maybe he wants to bring some prohibited things. For example, you have a shop, and then your neighbor wants to sell his shop, and then he sold to somebody who actually wants to bring the prohibited drinks in his shop. All right. So now you are selling the halal things, and suddenly somebody is selling haram things. So now you are running a restaurant, suddenly somebody is selling the haram things, the liquor drinks in your neighbor. Then these two things cannot go together, right? So it will harm your neighbor. That's the reason why Sharia says you have to ask your neighbor whether he is willing to buy. If he say no, no, I'm not willing to buy, I have no money to buy, then you can actually sell it to anybody you want. But you have to ask him first, right? But when you ask him, you're supposed to give him the market price, not actually the different price, right? If it is a market price, then he can buy. If you say that double price to him, then he cannot buy. That's why harm cannot be removed by causing another harm. Okay. Liability justify gain. Al-Kharaj bil-Daman. This is also very important in the Qawa'id. The benefit of a thing is a return for the liability for loss from that thing. You know, for example, this is very easy to understand. Let me give you an example. All right. There is a car. It's a defective car, but when you sold to someone, you didn't tell him there's a defect. So that guy was using the car. For example, you sold to me a car. I was using the car. After 1 week, I found out there's a big problem in the engine. All right. Then I came back to him. I said, there's a problem in the engine. You didn't tell me. And then he said, okay, I will take back your car. Because it's a defective car, I will take back the car. But right now, you have to pay me the rental of the 1 week. You got my point? All right. For example, I repeat, there is a car, defective car, and you sold to me, and I was using it for 1 week. After 1 week, I found out there's a problem in the car. I want to return and get the money. Now I'm returning the money. I want to return. I want to get the return money. But the one you are saying, you are telling me, no, I will reduce 1 week rental because you've been using my car for 1 week. This is where we can say al-haraj bil taman, liability justifies gain. I don't have to pay the rental to you because at the first place you sold me the defective car. Why I don't have to say I don't have to pay you? Why I don't have to pay you the rental during this 1 week time? Before I get to know, during this 1 week time, if the car is stolen, if the car is, for example, destroyed, there's a fire because of it, it burned the car. Now, now who is responsible? You or me? I am responsible, right? So I will be, yes. So I will be responsible because I bought the car from you. I was using it within the 1 week. Within 1 week, I lost the car. Within 1 week, the car is in fire. I am the responsible. So I'm taking the responsibility. So liability justify gain. So now I'm returning you the car because you sold me the defective car. So I don't have to pay you the rental. I have to take the money as I give it to you. All right. The same example also can be given the partners in the musharaka and mudaraba. Usually the one who give the money and the one who work on it, even though the one who give money who doesn't do anything, but he also entitles to get the profit. That's why we call mudaraba and musharaka. The last one, when it is forbidden to take a thing, it is also forbidden to give it. Everything, for example, bribe, for example, I don't drink wine because it is prohibited. But can I sell it to somebody? No. All right. I'm not eating pork, but can I sell it to somebody? Can I sell wine to non-Muslims? Because non-Muslims can eat and drink, right? Can I sell it to them? No, you cannot sell. You cannot, because it is prohibited. Because what is the point of whatever is actually prohibited to consume? It is also prohibited to promote, prohibited to give it to others. That is the point. That's why interest, even though I'm not using it, I'm not using riba, I'm not making it, but at the same time, I cannot be somewhere where riba uh, is being transacted. Meaning to say that I cannot work in a conventional bank because the bank is actually dealing with riba. That's why Prophet ﷺ said those who actually deals with it, who actually writes it, records it, the one everybody, akilo riba wa mukiluhu. Everybody is actually cursed. Also, the wine, also Prophet ﷺ said, the one who makes it, who takes it, who distributes it, who give it to somebody, everybody is cursed. All right, because this is particularly we are talking about the haram business. Whatever haram to eat is also haram as a business. All right. Okay, so I stop here. This is the attendance. Please take note.